Welcome to the Lions Leadership Den. I'm your host, Steve Rosenberg. I got my very, very good friend, Alex Osenenko. And we have created this show because we're entrepreneurs. We own businesses. We run with it. We deal with problems like everyone else does. And we kind of want to learn from other people that have problems and how they deal with it. And we got a great guy today, very good friend of ours. Everybody knows him. They love him. He's like that guy that walks in the room. Everyone knows him. Enrique, thanks for being here today, man. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Wait, so you're having me on the show to discuss problems because you just figure, oh, I'm the guy with the problems?
Yes.
You're the guy with solutions. We're looking for
Okay, that's
we have
better.
problems, you have solutions. That's what it is. That's the
people glued to the screens, and it's so good to be alive here with you, Steve. I think this was a phenomenal run on the show. We've learned a lot, and today I'm excited about the episode today. Enrique, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Jevons?
No.
Jevons?
So Jevons is actually English. So I guess you never took math in college or anything. William Stanley Jevons is a famous English economist, and I'm a descendant of it. So Jevons English, Enrique obviously Spanish. And if anybody can pronounce one name, they definitely cannot pronounce the other. So, yep,
so you're saying you are, wait. So you're saying that you are, you come from a family of mathematicians?
On the Jevons side, well, just one famous one. I don't know if anybody else. Oh, my brother.
Where are you from, Alex? How many you got on your list there?
I mean, my last name is Osenenko. I don't know. My grandpa was a communist. So what?
I'm guessing a fisherman. They're mostly fishermen.
Yeah, I fished a little bit, but yeah, no, that's actually an interesting insight. So, like, what has that been impactful in your life, Enrique? Like, is that one of those things you have to live up to? Or have you taken math more seriously that way? You went through college with math. Like, tell us a little bit of a story on that one.
Oh my goodness, no. It was just intriguing, interesting. First in high school when I discovered that that our lineage included that, but and then in college. But no, my brother did get a degree in math, and he did go on then to become an exceptional, he's partner with a computer software company, essentially. And he does computer software without a computer originally, because he just did the theoretical math in the background. But I think we're diverging here too much. I do course on a daily basis. So
I hear you've done really well with applied mathematics when it comes to real estate investing, haven't you? You got yourself a nice little portfolio.
I use math with my portfolio on a daily basis. That's correct. I don't know. Yeah.
How many properties do you own now?
That's the difference between professional host and amateur host. A professional host will find a segue to move the interview slightly into the right direction, since the math wasn't really since I couldn't really put any
hook in there. They couldn't put
keep going. Steve,
all righty. Well, here's some more math. Steve asked how many properties. All right. Currently, as we speak, at this moment, I own 73 properties, 73 units. All right, 73 units. These ones, now I should specify, are units that it's just my wife and I that own these 73. It's without any partners. I have, over the years, I've gotten up actually to over 200 units at one point, but that's because I had about a year's worth with 125 mobile homes that was on a contract. Then I had 54 units in partnership with there were two other partners on that particular deal. So my numbers have gone kind of up and down, but 73 is where I stand. But at least it's kind of funny when I hear some people talk about, oh, I've got 200 units, I've got 600 units, but then when you come to realize, oh, that's actually, they're within a syndication, and they're just one of 50 partners in those 200 units.
Exactly.
Or whatever. So,
Exactly.
73 of my own at the moment.
And then you own a property management company, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And just to give you an insight, and Alex, I think you know, but Enrique and I met, we met, what is it, about 3-4 years ago, I think, in Seattle?
Yeah, it might be almost 4 years ago. Certainly at least 3 years ago. Yep, in Seattle.
Yeah, so Enrique and I both were speaking at an event. A good friend of ours, Charles Yarber, who him and his wife Grace have an expo up in Seattle. And Enrique and I met, and we just started talking about what we both do and systems and procedures. And then Enrique's big into outsourcing and leverage, and as I am as well. Actually, I think I introduced you to Darren Hunter and all those guys, right? Didn't you?
You did. You introduced me to several people. So definitely, yeah, if anybody's scaling up, you're the person to talk to. And that was certainly one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that I talked to you. As Charles was always saying, you got to meet Steve. You got to meet Steve, because that's the thing, is you always want to kind of learn from somebody who's, you know, a few steps ahead of you. And certainly you've been that for me, Steve. So,
yes. No, well, it's been great. I've actually learned quite a bit from you. And last weekend I was just with Tarl and Grace and these mega rock stars that went to a mastermind in Maui with Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets and everyone. It's very interesting, man. You know, you always got to keep stepping your game up with these guys. And man, I tell you what, there's some guys that are operating at a high level. It was very
Is some stardust rubbed off on you, Steve? Like
a little. I got a couple.
Let's hear some of the revelations, but like, let's set the show up, man. Because what's the topic? Like, if people
the first revelation I got is that I should not try and surf, because that did not go well for me at all, and I think I bruised a rib or something. I'm not really sure yet, but. The biggest revelation I got, Alex, which you could probably attest to and probably say I told you so, was that in order for me to speed up, I need to slow down and I need to be more focused. As we know, I have that challenge of doing a lot of things. And, you know, the more successful people I meet, they seem to be more narrow and more focused. Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely learned that myself in attending meetups. When I first started attending all these meetups, it was like shiny objects. You know, I'd go and talk to the notes person and I'd start getting distracted thinking, oh my goodness, this guy's killing it at notes. Maybe I should go into notes. Or this guy's killing it flipping. Maybe I should, you know, start flipping. There's amazing people doing so many amazing different things, but I agree. It is better, in my opinion, to focus and do what you do best so that you have that competitive edge of what you do.
Yeah, very much. So along those lines, let's talk a little bit about you, Enrique. You give everyone a little bit history about kind of how you got into this business as a property management company, owning the management company, and then we'll kind of fast forward to what has transpired recently and where you're going with that.
Well, my whole career straight out of college was in hotel management. I worked for Hyatt hotels, I worked for Marriott. Ultimately, I was the general manager at a Marriott hotel. And it was at that point that I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And my whole goal in trying to, you know, get to the top and thinking, okay, now I'm a general manager of a hotel, you know, woo, I made it, I'm at the top. But then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I realized, oh crap, I'm at the top of the wrong mountain.
Yeah.
So then I decided to change mountains. I abandoned ship. I would have loved to have purchased a hotel, but I didn't want to go in on a motel. So the next best thing for me was apartment buildings. So I figured I could apply all my skills and knowledge, because really it's just about, ultimately, it's a customer service industry in many respects. And so I decided to purchase an apartment building. In order to do that, I had to cash out on our primary residence. We had primary residence plus one rental, but that was in the San Francisco Bay Area. I knew I could not afford to buy an apartment or any units really in the Bay Area. So I cashed out. We moved to Washington, Central Washington, where I had some family, and our very first purchase there.
Enrique,
that was 2008. I hit it at the peak. February, yeah, I sold my primary residence I sold in February 2008. I bought it for $280,000. I sold it for $998,000. So essentially $1 million. Yeah. So huge.
See this huge backyard right here? That's $1 million right there. That's like my ass is sitting on a chair. That's like the square footage on this chair is worth probably about as much as your house in Dallas, Sir Rosenberg.
That ghetto barbecue behind you probably cost about $1,000, I'm guessing.
No, it's paying rent. Like it's expensive to keep the big boy right there, right?
I don't doubt it.
Anyway, sorry, Enrique. We just need to expound on this wonderful, I don't know how people live, Bay Area.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It was an appreciating market, which is wonderful because then I obviously benefited by the fact that my primary residence appreciated so much. But as I learned from Rich Dad Poor Dad, is the fact that my primary residence was not necessarily an asset. It was more of a liability for me because of the fact that here I am, essentially house rich, cash poor. My wealthy house was not enabling me to live the lifestyle that I wanted to live, right? So so I decided to cash out. I did it right at the perfect time, and then started purchasing properties. I started with a 13-unit apartment building, and then a couple months later purchased an 8-unit, and then another 8-unit. As a matter of fact, when I was buying throughout, I started in 2008 and haven't stopped since. I'm still buying. But in the first few years, it felt like every deal was a better deal. I was loving life at that point because every deal was a better deal. But also every deal then was becoming better and better just because of the fact that I was always trying to put myself out there, let people know, hey, I'm a buyer of multifamily properties, and that way deals started coming to me. So you get this snowball effect from in the beginning where you're just looking. Once your reputation starts to develop, and so in this case, my reputation was then of a buyer long before I ever developed a reputation for managing property for others. And that's where I would say, to folks when you're starting out is make sure you get a good reputation, make sure everybody knows exactly what you're doing, but don't try and become the jack of all trades because then nobody's going to know what you're doing. When I go to meetups and a person introduces themselves and they say, oh, hi, my name's Joe. Oh, I do everything. Okay, to me, that means you do nothing. So
you suck at everything is what it means. It means you're not good at anything at all, is the reality.
Toe in the water kind of a thing. Yeah. So Enrique, I'm just curious, like to transition this a little bit from like a investment portfolio to a property management company. That's quite a transition. Not very few people make that transition. I know a lot of PMs have that background. Hey, I need to manage my own properties, and I decided to go into the management business. But many don't survive. Many don't do well. Many don't do it at all. How did you transition? Like, what was the aha moment for you?
Well, the business plan was always to do that, but I started the very first few months in just managing my own properties, but and then very quickly, then again, people got to know me as having properties, and that's what I think gave folks the confidence in having me manage their property was the fact that I was already managing my own property. So it gave me the credibility I needed to, because certainly it is hard to start out if on day one you are, you're approaching somebody, you say, hey, let me go manage your property for you. And they ask, oh, well, how many you manage? And you currently say none, and I've never managed before. Then, that's a tough sell. So so it worked well for me having the credibility of managing my own properties. Now, as far as getting into managing for others, it was very similar to my previous position as being general manager in the hotel industry, was simply in the hotel industry, it's a customer service industry, and it is working with staff, it's working with hotel guests, it is making sure that all the marketing and sales is going well. There's so many similar facets to it that it became a very natural, easy transition for me. So but it was also a sink or swim for me. So it really was, I had to make sure that this new business venture of property management and the other business of owning properties, I had to make sure that they both worked because while I had about a year's worth of runway available in funds, I gave myself a year to make the business work. Ultimately, if it had not, then of course I would have needed to go back into the hotel industry. And so I knew that was going to be my fallback. But it took a lot of guts to jump ship with a family of 5, with kids to support and a wife. So.
Enrique, did you have, when you first started, like, did you focus more on the operational side or the sales and marketing side? Like what, a lot of people that are in this role, they think they need to build the perfect systems yet before they even think of marketing. And then what happens a lot of times is they have these perfect systems, but no one's calling them. And because they don't realize it, as Alex knows it, it takes a while to get that momentum wheel turning. But most entrepreneurs are operators, not necessarily sales and marketing people. So they kind of think of it as an add-on after. How did you do it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm one of those people who thought of it as an add-on afterwards. And so I did very much start out with, and so there we could talk about, what would I do again? Yeah, sure. I would have tried to have done more sales and marketing, but in the beginning, no, I was very focused on just on the operational side of things. I was just very focused on the units that I had under management and my own, making sure that I was doing a good job with them. And then
But you were successful with your buildings, right? I mean, Enrique, and you said people got to know you. You went to certain events and you're an investor yourself. And I think that sort of success, that sort of mental toughness attitude, and getting stuff right, built the trust. A lot of people will start a business, as you said, without managing your property, and do all kinds of marketing. That may not work as well because people will come in and come out on the other side because you can't deliver. But this is interesting. What struck me is like the story differential here. Like Steve's book came out, like it's Fail Your Way into the Millions. Is that what it's called, Steve?
Failing My Way to Millions. Yeah, pretty much. Building an empire.
Dude, Enrique's book would be Succeeding My Way into the Millions.
Possibly. Well, we don't know. We've only got about 5 minutes into a story.
Yeah, but
there's a twist.
But like I remember like well, of course you remember your homes. You've gotten into some subpar prime, let's call them homes, and you had that whole learning experience by getting whipped, right? Where Enrique was more, I think, mathematical about it. I want to bring that back, man. That's the lineage right there, man. I think it's not nothing wrong with you, Steve. I'm just saying, like.
Thank you.
From a hotel industry, hospitality industry, I think he went about it. And what I love what he said, which I don't think a lot of people said. People say usually, oh, yeah, I decided to manage properties. Like that was the business plan to begin with, right?
It was my business plan to begin with, yes. And I did have set up, I knew exactly what my cost of operations was going to be, and I stuck to that. So for me, it was very important to make sure that every unit is a profitable unit. And what sometimes people, I think, fail to think about is in their wanting to make sure that it is profitable, of course, is they fail to think about things like capital improvements. The fact that the roof is not going to last forever. The water heater, not all the systems, certain, all the appliances, they're not going to last forever. And it's crazy when I, will start managing a single family home for somebody, and then the new tenant moves in and the dishwasher breaks, and then they get the owner gets upset saying, what's going on? I lived there 15 years. The dishwasher was fine the entire 15 years. And you're telling me now that after a month of the tenant moving in that the dishwasher is broken, they must have broken it. Well, the fact is dishwashers don't last forever. Systems, not all appliances last, forever. So you got to take that into account. And certainly when you're putting together, whether you're using a calculator, like a Bigger Pockets calculator, which I think is a fabulous calculator, or using any other calculator, certainly for myself in the beginning, it was just all Excel spreadsheets. You got to make sure that mathematically it all is going to work out. And don't just rely on the fact that, oh, I got a bank loan. The bank trusts me to purchase the property. Therefore, it must be a good deal. It must be a profitable deal. It may certainly not be. And so maintenance, repairs, those are very important considerations that you need to take into effect and into consideration, as well as property management. Even if you're going to manage the property yourself, you need to make sure that you're putting in a line item for property management, because if you ever go to sell that property, realize that the buyer may not want to, manage the property themselves, and that property management cost is going to be there for the buyer. Certainly, it's even a cost for yourself, because you're using up your time, so it's an opportunity cost. You're using up your time managing your own property, where you might be able to go and use your time more wisely doing something else.
So let me ask you this, Enrique. As you were building your management company, did you, and I can speak from our experience, but I'm just curious yours is, as you were building it and growing it over the years, were you cycling through different challenges? Like at first it sounded like maybe it was inbound flow of leads and conversions. Then did it transition to other challenges and kind of like a whack-a-mole where you're trying to put out different fires? Or what was your experience as you built your company? Because you seem like a much more, we'll say, systematic person than maybe we are. But still challenges arise, right? There's not things that are in your control that are just going to happen. So what were some things that you dealt with?
Yeah, no, that's true. Whack-a-mole is a good analogy, because of the fact that, you only have so much time. Every individual only has so much time. And so you start focusing your time on one particular thing, then what of course happens is that, something else arises because of the fact that you haven't been paying attention to it. So with, if I'm paying a lot of particular attention towards rehabbing a particular unit, then, it just means that perhaps I'm not spending as much time checking in with my tenants at other units, or checking in with a property owner. Just because I don't hear from a property owner doesn't necessarily mean that everything is wonderful. That particular property owner may not happen, that just not expressed it, or they might have different ideas that they're wanting to sell their property. And that's always very important for me to know as a property manager, is what direction you want to go in. Do you want to sell your property? Do you want to just hold on to it forever? Do you want to refinance it? These are all important things to know. I always liken it to, if you're going to, let's say flip a house, or even just, have a contractor come into your own house. If you hire a contractor and you just say, oh, go rehab my house for me, go flip my house for me, go, great. Well, they can do that, and they might do an exceptional job, but it may not be what you had in mind. You might not have had in mind, marble flooring, but the contractor might have thought, oh, that was great to have, this marble flooring. So you need to always provide direction to, I think, anybody that you hire, whether it's a general contractor or a property manager. And then you always have to keep your eyes on everything, because when you do focus too much attention on one thing, then certainly the other things that you're not focusing on are going to start to become problematic. So it is very much like a game of whack-a-mole.
So now, as you were doing this, and you're like us, where you started doing a lot of leverage and a lot of outsourcing, right? So I know you and I discussed, and you were big into outsourcing with virtual assistants. When did you start making that transition in your business model, or was it always in your business model?
I didn't go to that detail in my business model, other than in my business model certainly was to hire employees. So from my background in the hotel industry, I knew for sure that I wanted to leverage other people's time. So just as you use a bank or other sources of money, private money and hard money, to leverage other people's money, I also wanted to make sure that I was leveraging other people's time, right? So I'm paying them for their time, but what they're able to produce for me is of greater value than what I'm paying them. Now, with the whole concept of virtual assistants, right? And so that is people working remotely, but just because they're a virtual assistant doesn't mean they're a robot. It just means that they're working in a different location. So a freelancer working in a different location than where you're at yourself. In the hotel industry, we did the very same thing. in the fact that we had the reservations department. Early on, even before the computers came along, the very first hotel I worked in, 474 rooms without a computer, and we had in Omaha, Nebraska, this was for Hyatt hotels, we had a call center, and it was people on an 800 number who were taking reservations. Now, so the idea was always there in my mind that I'm going to have folks like the hotel industry who are working remotely. So even though you may not think of that when you check into a hotel, you don't think that, oh, behind the scenes that there's an accounting department working remotely. You don't think of maintenance coordinators working remotely. You may not think of people answering the phones working remotely, but certainly in the hotel industry, all those three things are happening, whether you realize it or not.
Sure.
It's not just the people you see face to face. There's a whole lot more people. So I always had in mind to use folks working remotely, and it's worked out extremely well for me.
Yeah. Now you got your company, you got up to, was about 800 units last time I talked to you?
Yeah, I'm over 800 units at the moment.
Okay.
Correct.
And
the third time that I've cracked the 800 number.
yeah, what's funny is we noticed when we were at about 800, that's where a lot of things started breaking for us. A lot of our systems started breaking, just volume of phone calls coming in. I think last month, I think we had about 800 service tickets coming in on, they just come in. It's just, now that could be it could be a lawn being mowed or something, but we track everything, and it's just, there's just a lot of things that come in on a daily, monthly, weekly basis that you have to figure out how to track, how to allocate for, how to make sure it's done. And right, Enrique? I'm sure you have the same challenges as well.
Oh yeah. You got to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. And certainly that is for any business, no matter how small, no matter how large you get, again, the hotel industry with thousands of hotels and hundreds of thousands of guests on a daily basis, or maybe I should use the analogy of the airline industry, right? You got to make sure that everybody gets to their destination alive, right? And so that's
the goal.
So that's a big deal. You got to make sure that the systems are working to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So in this, you had the hotel experience, which is very unique as a background for property management entrepreneur. What do you think this, like, Enrique, honestly, like, do you, and I think you do, but I want to understand why. Why do you think this industry is scalable? Like, why do you think this is scalable? This is such a local kind of job, right? Kind of profession. Like, you have to be near or around the properties. At least some of you employees are. You certainly believe in scalability of this industry, and you want all in for it. We'll talk about it in a minute, but like, why do you think this is scalable? How does it translate? How does it connect to the hotel industry, or does it?
Yeah. So I'll keep using that analogy, obviously, since it's the one that I'm personally familiar with. The reason, there's many reasons that I think it's scalable. But certainly, for me, the most important reason is it's identical to a hotel, and a hotel is very local. When you check in at your hotel, that's obviously a very local experience. You're interacting with people who are checking you in, cleaning your room at the local level. And so how it's scalable for a large corporation like Hyatt, Marriott, Hilton, and such is the fact that they're putting together standards, training their staffs on those standards, and to make sure that people understand going in as hotel guests what the expectation is, so that that person is paying a certain dollar amount, and they're because of their prior experiences, because of the marketing, they have a certain expectation. I think that can be identical with the property management, with the rental business industry, is the fact that you can scale and create a brand such that individuals would trust your brand, your method of managing properties, and your ability to get a good return on investment, regardless of where the property might be throughout the entire United States. So you can, again, check into a hotel, regardless of where that hotel is within the United States. If you're selecting a particular brand, your expectation is going to be the same, whether that hotel is in California, Mississippi, Texas, right? So that's where I think it is very identical in that it is scalable. Also, I think that the industry is still in its infancy, and I think it's in its infancy, especially compared to other countries like Australia. One of the things I learned about Australia is that it has an exceptionally high percentage of its rental properties that are managed professionally by property management companies. Now, here in the United States, it's actually the reverse, that most people are managing their own properties. The difficulties for people managing their own properties is, number one, they don't realize how much time it takes. And so when somebody moves out, they've only got the evenings and weekends available because they're, they've got a full-time job or whatever. And so then it ends up taking them so much longer to get that unit rented out. And therefore, they've now lost forever all of those room nights that they could have had as occupied and bringing in money. And the other part of it is with legislation. So there are, of course, there are federal housing laws that we all need to abide by. There's state laws. And then at the local level, there's city ordinances. And it is every year, as specifically with cities, even more so, but even smaller cities, housing becomes more and more of an issue. And unfortunately, one of the things that cities do is they create these additional ordinances in order to, what they think is, fix the housing problem that they have in their city. Of course, I have a different viewpoint of that, but it is one of these things where laws come about because somebody does something wrong. So you get an owner in a city who does something crazy and outlandish, and it affects a lot of people. So now then they implement a law to correct that type of behavior. And as a property owner, if you're just doing it by yourself, and you're not staying on top of all the laws that are constantly changing, then you can get yourself in a whole lot of legal trouble. And certainly for people, these rental properties, this is typically the biggest asset that they personally own. And to put that in jeopardy, in my opinion, is kind of crazy. And oftentimes I think it's really out of the fact that the owner doesn't realize how much jeopardy they're placing their most valuable asset in by not staying on top of the law, not hiring professionals who have that knowledge.
Enrique, I have this opens up a deeper question. I've always had this question. I'm so thankful you brought this up. Look, some of the most successful property management companies I know with the largest margin, the best service, are operating in cities like San Francisco, cities like Los Angeles, where regulations are significant, and it makes no sense for an individual, uneducated individual in the property management space to manage their own rental. So I think what like San Francisco as an entity itself is very similar to Australia, where the percentages of self-managed properties is more on the 20-30% rather than the other way around. So here's my question. Why do I hear property managers griping about regulations? Like, in my opinion, this is the biggest boost to you need to do less marketing. No marketing, the government does the marketing for you by tightening the regulations and ordinances around housing. How do you feel about that?
No, that's very true. I think it's very much, like an attorney's business. Attorneys would be out of business, CPAs would be out of business if the laws were easy. And if they didn't change, if they were easy to follow. But because of the fact that in preparing your own taxes, it just becomes more and more difficult. Certainly, for many years, I did my own taxes, but as it became more difficult, more time consuming, it just became smarter for me to make sure that I didn't, make a mistake. And so then I hire somebody else to do that, because they're going to ultimately, while of course I have to write them a check, I've, got to pay that individual, but ultimately they are going to either save me or make me more money. The same with an attorney. Of course you can represent yourself in court. There is no law that says you have to hire an attorney. Now you can't represent a corporation. So for all those people who have properties in an LLC, realize you cannot go to court and represent an LLC in a lot of states. Of course, every state, is different, but in a lot of states, you cannot represent a corporation. You can only represent yourself, but you can go in and represent yourself in court with an eviction as an example. But and I have done that many, many, many times myself. So I do have a very good knowledge of what it takes to represent yourself in court. But it is, as the laws become more complex, it is important to hire somebody who that is their full-time job. So you're right, as the laws become more complex in the housing industry, it's going to become more important to hire property managers who are doing it full-time, not just a real estate agent who maybe has 10 or 20 properties that they're just doing on the side, because that's obviously not their focus. It's important to hire somebody whose sole focus is that property management, if they're going to be representing your property. But it's the very same as hiring an attorney, in my opinion, for that reason.
Alex, just to your point, I think that, we'll take an example. The state of Oregon, and I believe it's the whole state, recently enacted rent control. So the ones that are kind of bitching and moaning about the fact that as property management owners and saying, man, I can't believe this, those are probably the ones that don't take their business model seriously, and they don't run it like a business, because now they're going, man, now I got to learn the rent control, as opposed to saying, this is great. No one else knows it. If I become the expert on it and I know it, everyone's going to go to me. So it's just, I think it's just a matter of people not running their business correctly, like a business. and those are the people that probably will get run out of business through lawsuits or litigation. Just like when it comes to investors, 1 out of 3 investors are in a lawsuit every year because they don't understand the laws and litigation of everything that goes on with eviction law, property code, all those things. I think you're seeing the same thing. I think what's going to happen is a lot of stuff starts on the West Coast and starts moving eastbound. I think you're going to see a lot more rent control. I think you're going to see a lot more of these laws and regulations. And I think what you're going to see is you're also going to see the property management companies that don't operate, that are kind of the, we'll call them mom and pop, the ones that don't really apply to the rules. Like Enrique said, maybe they're part-timers, they do real estate. They're floaters, yeah. Yeah, I think you're going to see them kind of get pressed out, and you're going to see the ones that actually operate correctly, that know what they're doing, like Enrique and other people we know. They're going to shine because they know what they're doing and they're experts in their field. So I think it's going to happen, Alex. I think we're just seeing the first wave of it.
Let's give away like this tip right now, like this whole show, like it's in segments. We're going to sort of deliver value. I think one of the most valuable pieces of knowledge and your sort of make a inflection point in your business is get in front of whatever regulations, like be the one on Facebook, be the one on YouTube, be the one on your blog that interprets every regulation that comes out before it comes out, then discuss the implications of it once it's voted in or voted out. I mean, that's it. Like, that's what Stephanie Gordon did. And she is probably one of the most successful property managers I've ever met in my life. Like, her company is amazing.
Besides me and Alex, besides me and Enrique, right?
Correct. So sorry, gentlemen. Yes. But Stephanie is, I bet you, like, if you do like a margin check, like she'll check you with the elbow. So, but she's got an amazing, and that's what she did. That's all she did. And this is, so tip right here. If you're in Oregon, gosh, you have such an opportunity. I don't see anybody come out and do this yet. You want to be the one that everybody calls. You don't want to spend any money on marketing, then do this.
Make the videos. Yeah.
It's also going to be a great market, Oregon, using it as an example. It's going to be a great market for buyers because it is going to frustrate as new laws, but this applies anywhere. As new laws come into effect anywhere, you're going to get owners who become frustrated, and then they just simply, you know, or they make a mistake, and then they just decide, no, forget it, I'm out. I can't take this. I don't know all the rules, and so I'm out of here. So as a buyer, it can actually be a very good advantage for you, is if you know the rules better than anybody else, then you can come in and buy up what other people don't understand.
Yeah. All right. Now I want to get to the meat of this conversation here. So I'm very intrigued. I'm sure a lot of people will be too. So Enrique, you had your business, right? You had it for quite a while. How many years did you have it?
11 years running now, since 2008.
Okay. And you recently made a decision to, I mean, here we got a guy who's got a successful business model, successful property management company. You recently did a shift and decided to move forward with taking your company in another direction and merge with a bigger company. Can you explain a little bit about that and kind of what ended up transpiring?
Sure. Yeah. So the what I decided to do was merge with a larger company in order for me to allow myself to grow. And so because of the fact that I wanted to continue to grow, but also I'm also always looking for better systems and better value that I can, you know, provide for all my clients, for all the owners that I manage properties for. Because I know that if you're just standing still, regardless of whatever industry you're in, or whatever job you're in, if you're just standing still, everybody else is going to pass you by. So I want to make sure I'm always on the forefront. And so one of the things is that by partnering with somebody else, I can now leverage a lot of their systems that they have in place, right? And so what I decided to do was merge with another company. So I did not sell my company in the fact, like, you know, sell it and then just go retire or go into another industry. So that would be more, you know, of an acquisition. So you talk about mergers and acquisitions, right? So one thing you can do is you can sell your company, walk away from it, and then that company takes over all of the management agreements, and then they manage all the properties. Or you can merge. So I decided to merge. All my staff stayed with me and merged on over. So the biggest change has been a change of name and a change of the software we're using. That's probably the two biggest things. But now we have a larger, more centralized accounting department with, we've got a couple of CPAs within that accounting department. So at 800 units, for example, I couldn't quite afford to have that large and that skilled of an accounting department on payroll. You know, it's pretty pricey to have that. The other part of it is I got to the point where I was kind of this, you know, middle size. I wasn't small anymore, but I wasn't big yet. I was mid-size, where I needed really a human resources department. Now I've joined a company that has a human resources department, whereas before, any HR related activities, that had to fall on me. Anything IT related before, that had to fall on me because I wasn't large enough to have an IT department. Now I've joined a company that is big enough that they have a separate IT department. They have a separate marketing department. They have they're big enough to have all these departments. I don't have to worry about those things.
Sorry, Enrique, how's the marketing been going for you? I hear that marketing of mine is pretty strong. I mean, have you seen a meaningful lift, like honestly, in new correct properties coming your way? Do you see it coming in the near future? I mean, what's some of your feedback on that side of things?
Yeah, it's been wonderful. It's this additional channel. So whereas before I grew my company, people grow their companies in different ways. I grew mine 100% organically. That meaning that 100% of all the clients that I had were clients that I had personally met or were personally referred to me, right? And so it was just a matter of myself always going to meetups, just getting out there myself, and that's how I came to know property owners, and that's how I got new business. Now, what I've got is by merging with a larger company. In this particular case, it's with Mind Property Management. They're a very large property management company. It's headquartered out of California, but they also have locations in a lot of other states. So they've got now a location in Arizona. They've got and throughout many different parts of California, San Diego, Sacramento, the Bay Area, Oakland, all these different regions that they're in, and they're growing quickly. Now I'm in the state of Washington, so now we have units under management in the state of Washington. So the as far as marketing goes, now there are folks, well, first of all, it's a much more robust website, which is bringing in a whole lot of leads. There are, Mind is using, of course, a lot of pay-per-click leads, and so those are coming in. Mind has a bunch of business development managers, and so these are people who are making outbound cold calls, and so they're bringing in a lot of leads. I never once did cold calls, so they're bringing in a lot of leads that way. They are attending a lot more functions than I can personally attend, because I'm just one, human being. I can't be everywhere, every place at all times, and they are now able to be in a lot more places for me. The marketing certainly, is.
Can I stop you for a second? So are they, because you're in Seattle and they're in San Francisco, wherever they're at in California, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
What, how are they going to functions in Seattle for you, or are they like?
Okay, Steve, you should know this. Not every owner, right, owns properties where they live. So not everybody in Texas lives in Texas, even though I'm sure everybody in Texas thinks that the whole world lives in Texas, right?
Who wouldn't, right? It's the country of, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So no, a lot of the owners that I manage for live in other parts of the country. San Francisco Bay Area being one of those parts. I've got a whole lot of owners that live in the San Francisco Bay Area, but because of affordability or whatever reason, personal reason they might have, they actually own property in the Seattle region or in the other parts of Washington State where I manage, Tacoma, Yakima. There's a whole lot of other cities within the state of Washington besides Seattle. And so they are, by attending functions, let's say in San Diego, in San Francisco, they get owners who have properties in the Seattle area and able to bring them. But then they're also attending a lot of functions, for example, NARPM. NARPM, an amazing, wonderful industry. I've been a member of NARPM, but I personally haven't had the time to attend the national NARPM events. And so as a result, I'm missing out there. But by joining a larger company that is able to attend these events, then they're able to bring in business.
Well, I mean, when you and I were in Seattle, 2-3 months ago at that big expo, they were there marketing. So I see your point. I thought you meant like smaller meetups in the local area, which I'm guessing at some level they do. Maybe not in your Yakima area, but just like you said, on a larger scale. Let me ask you this though. Were there concerns that you had? I'm sure there were, right? Anybody going to a new company, are you going to have your anonymity, or what's going to happen to your staff? And were there concerns that you had that basically have been proven wrong? Let's say that you were concerned about this, concerned about that, because there's obviously, we know that in our industry there's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of big players coming in buying stuff. So we get approached by people as well, and you're always like, I don't know if I want to, take that, I don't want to lose our brand, our name, everything we built, my staff. So how did you get through that? And then how did your team take it?
Yeah, sure. When you partner with somebody, it is, well, it's like a marriage in many respects, right? You have a lot of expectations going into the marriage, and they may or may not all, come true. So it is the same with, I think to be successful in real estate, you need 3 things. You need time, expertise, and money. And if you don't have one of those things, you need to partner with somebody who does have what you're lacking, all right? So I was lacking a human resources department. I was lacking a business development, management, marketing department. I was lacking IT departments. And so by merging, that's where the company has been able to help me the most. Now there's a lot of, as far as identity and such go, it is still a very personal, localized business in that I'm still very much the face of the company for my local area in Washington State. So I still have that. As far as then, so I don't believe that I've lost my identity. It's just now that people know that I've gained a partner.
Sure. Yeah. So like I mean, maybe some minuses, but no negatives per se, at least, to now, and all positives from what you've seen, at least with this group that you're working with.
The negatives is attending meetings. By joining a bigger company.
Now you're accountable to attend meetings, right?
Yeah. So now all of a sudden I've got a ton of meetings to attend, which is again very similar back to when I was with Marriott, with Hyatt Hotels, larger corporations. You have more meetings because you got to make sure that your business is working within the greater company. So now I have meetings with other departments that I never had before. So you could say, well, that's a drawback now that I've got to attend all these meetings that I never had to attend before. But otherwise, drawbacks, that is not been an issue. I still have my autonomy. I still am able to really dictate my schedule, and I'm doing what I want to do, and anything I don't want to do, then of course I hire it out, which is what I've always done. And in this particular case now with larger company, okay, I do what I am good at and what I want to do, and then I speak up and say, hey, I don't want to be doing this part of the business. We need somebody else to do this part for me, because this part is not something I want to do. It's not something that I'm particularly good at, and therefore what's nice about, but I would say that, with a lot of companies, they're good about listening. You just got to make sure, you partner up with a company that listens.
Yeah.
So if you had a time machine and you would go back, when did you join Mind, Enrique? Was it?
I joined, in December of last year. So I've been with the company for over 8 months now.
So knowing what you know now, can you give advice? Like, we've got to wrap this up, but parting advice to people who are considering joining Mind or potentially another larger organization they feel comfortable with. Any wisdom you can share on some of the things to do, to prepare, to be mindful of? Anything?
Yeah, sure. When you start a new business, you got to make sure that all your finances are in order. And I think when you either choose to sell, if perhaps you decide that you just want to have somebody acquire your business, then I think you need to make sure that you have your finances in order, because of course the company is going to put a valuation on your company, and you want to make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward. And to do that, you got to make sure your finances are in order. And the same with a merger. It's a very similar thing. You want to make sure that they're now the valuation of your company is the correct one. So you got to make sure that your finances are in order. But I think that's the same as with properties. If you're buying and selling a property, you got to have your finances in order when you make that purchase. And when you sell that property, in order to get the most money for it, you got to make sure that that property is valued at its highest value. And you got to do that by making sure that, of course, that you have good records on all the tenants that you had, and good rent rolls, and that the property is going to be at its best when you choose to liquidate it. So when you choose to merge a company, make sure it's at its best, and keep good finances.
Here we go, boys and girls. Here's the words of wisdom from a descendant of great William Stanley Jevons, who was economist and logician. keep your finances in order, right? And
Yeah.
get the best valuation for your company. Know what you're getting into. You will have some meetings, but in reality, you will gain a partner and an ability to operate within your specific area of expertise while having other competent people handle other parts of the business so the business can grow. It was a pleasure having you all on. Steve, any parting words?
No, I think it was good. I think it was informative. Enrique, as always, man, I love hanging out and chatting with you. And sorry we missed you in Maui last weekend. It was fun, man. But next time we'll see you.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed out, but yes, congratulations on everything, Steve and Alex. You guys are both amazing. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk.
So are you. I won't let you live this down anymore. Like, that's it. Now that I know, all my math questions go to you.
That's right. The human calculator.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. We'll see you. Thanks, Enrique.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.